Okay, so in contrast, we just looked at an example of a sustained investigation that scored a 2 in row B, and now I want to show you one that scored a 3. Remembering that even though this one is specifically labeled as 2D art and design, the row B is exactly the same for both 2D design and drawing. Row B focuses on practice, experimentation, and revision. This is the overall paragraph that the student wrote to defend their work as a whole. You will write this closer to the end of the class once you know what most of your sustained investigation is going to look like. My SI explores the biphilia hypothesis with a focus on humans' emotional and physical disconnect from nature in images 1 and 2. After research, I unpack this complex issue further. Although humanity desires to connect with the world, they also civilize it for their own benefit and thus ultimately destroy it. Visiting the Family Conservation Reserve, I captured scenes showing human control over nature in images 3, 4, and 5. I experimented and revised. Note that the student is really using the words that are in the rubric and trying to say, this is where I did what you say I need to do. I experimented and revised with locations, props, and poses to arrive at strongest intent and composition for the finals. To personally connect, I guided myself in nature as seen in image 6, not entirely succeeding in 7. I used a suit as a metaphor to depict that nature will always be a part of us as seen in image 8, even when we tame the world in image 9. Buildings are an example of humanity's need for order to the detriment of the surrounding environment as seen in image 11. Doors are a gateway for humans to step outside in the untamed wild, yet they also shield us and disconnect us from it in image 10. In work 13, I come to a rigid standstill, which depicts that control is the barrier for harmony between humans and nature. The final work, image 15, after experimentation in image 14, represents the fading of the human race if deep consideration for nature is not embraced. Let's look at the work. Image 1. They're telling us digital camera. They're telling us more about the camera they used, that it was a Canon, that they used it in manual mode, and the lens that they used. And they chose that because they want to capture details of decaying daisies. Process. Set up to cast shadow. Lightroom used to emphasize skin texture, cold colors, and shriveled flowers. Make note of the difference in detail, especially for the materials and processes in this example from the previous example that scored a 2. Image 2. This is a little bit more of a process image where we're seeing several images coming together to communicate information. Digital camera, flowers, attempt to connect to nature using my physical body and discarded flowers. Process. Self-portraiture via phone, controlling camera, experimentation with pose, light, and composition. Note, they're telling us right here that they experimented. Image 3, again, so we have several images together. This is can also be a mix of using that idea of juxtaposition. How are you putting many images together to tell a more clear story? Digital camera, family farm, bottle-fed lambs, my environmentalist brother connecting with raw nature. Photographed farm scenes from lamb feeding to butchering for human consumption, edited light in the eyes. Image 4. Digital camera, wide-angle lens, abandoned farm hunt, workhouse paired with self wearing fancy dress. Rode through the farm, photograph self at hunt, self-portraiture via phone, controlling the camera. Digital camera, manual mode, wide-angle lens, contrast of broken structure with organic, human, and horse. Process, dug hole to set low-angle view, adventured farther from the hut, and self-portraiture via camera connect. Digital camera, Canon 70D manual mode, self-portraiture, capture details of engulfing plants. Watch the earthing movie and attempted grounding, Photoshop used to repeat plant. So here, even their process, they're telling us some of the research they did to arrive at this idea. Portrait lens to capture details of letting go, dirt added to feed, process. Theory suggests walking barefoot can heal the body, connect versus disconnect, self-timer for portraiture. Image 8, black suit, digital camera, wide angle lens to visualize metaphor of growth, straw out of humanity. Process, read, humanity and nature are not separate. Depicted this. Black portrays human control in nature. Image 8. So we'll see this one. The student actually added text to their image. That is something that you are allowed to do. Just know you're not guaranteed that someone is actually going to read all of it, but that is another way to get a little bit more writing into your work, especially if it really connects to the meaning of your work. So here we have a digital camera, wide angle lens to encompass decaying building, flowers and black suit, and a coat hanger. Process, read article on disconnect from nature, picked flowers, and put in abandoned building as metaphor. Image 10, digital camera, Canon 70D manual mode, wide angle lens to capture the exterior-interior decay. Process, adventured to find the effects climate change has had on farms. Adobe used to detail the peeled paint. So here they're using juxtaposition to show us the full image and then to give us this close-up of what they really want us to see and pay close attention to. Here we're seeing another image paired with text. Digital camera, wide angle Canon lens to capture the details of abandoned materials and dead tree. The process, walked out abandoned building, imagining 10 to find detrimental human-induced effects on the environment. Oh, she's saying image 10. So this is where she was, walked out further into this. That's what that is referencing. Here we see a totally different process image. This is a great example of a process image in general, but especially if you're using photography. So here we see like a whole bunch of images that are captured, playing with having an image reflected, different scenes, really helping us see what all she was working on figuring out. Photo of workbook, including process work, guiding research on nature's healing power and color scheme, experimented with creating composition images via layering, balance placement, and mirroring in Photoshop. And now we're actually seeing one of those images come to life. Digital camera, wide angle lens to emphasize open, degraded landscape and movement of the girl. Final revised work Photoshop depicts both freedom and constriction given to us by nature. Here we're seeing some more process of a whole bunch of images coming together. Process work displayed together to show experimentation for final idea, humans' reliance on nature. Use film Polaroid to help connect to present, explored humans' historical relationship with horse. And final image. Film Polaroid's wooden chair as a metaphor for nature, posh clothes to contrast organic background. Process was dual exposure setting to represent fading of humans with full reliance on nature, and then scanned the images. So this student scored a 3 in row B. And let's hear why. I'm hoping that you could already see some of those changes from the last one we looked at. So the visual evidence demonstrates practice, experimentation, and revision, indicating the development of the sustained investigation. The works show practice and experimentation with compositions moving away from single to multi-image presentations to tell a story in images 2, 3, 4, 9, and 15. The addition of prose to add contextual layers to images 9 and 11 further demonstrates development. Images 12 and 14 show practice, experimentation, and revision towards arriving at the final images 13 and 15. This portfolio clearly shows the visual evidence of practice, experimentation, and revision demonstrates the development of sustained investigation, and the written evidence describes how the sustained investigation reveals evidence of practice and experimentation or revision. The writing describes how the sustained investigation, humans, emotional, and psychological, physical, sorry about that, guys, disconnect from nature, shows evidence of practice, experimentation, or revision. I experimented and revised with locations, props, and poses to arrive at the strongest intent and composition for the finals. The visual evidence presents this intention. Another quote that cites experimentation and revision is the final work, 15, after experimentation in 14, represents the fading of the human race if deep consideration for nature is not embraced. The written evidence describes additional experimentations with symbols and metaphors to further the inquiry of the sustained investigation. A suit as a metaphor to depict that nature will always be a part of us in image 8, even when we tame the world in image 9. Also, buildings are an example of humanity's need for order to the deterrent of the surrounding environment in 11. Throughout the written evidence, the text describes many occasions of practice, experimentation, and revision.